Hello, everyone, and welcome to the introductory episode of the DrawGo podcast, a podcast all about Magic the Gathering. I'm your host, Jake, known in some spaces as SlyCrow, and today, on this first episode of the podcast, we're going to be diving into what the pod is all about, as well as asking a pressing question in Magic's standard community these days. Is Izzet a problem? So, before we dive into our main topic today, figure we could talk a little bit about the podcast and what the goal of it is. Basically, the idea is to talk about all things Magic the Gathering, from lore to deck techs, different formats, new sets, standout cards, tournament results, and more. This is a podcast about the love of the game, and it's meant to cover a wide spectrum of topics for a wide variety of people. Not every episode will be for everyone, and I think that's okay. We're covering a lot of ground. There's a lot to talk about. The game is basically endless, and as such, there's going to be a lot of opinions on what makes the game so great. And that is why the game is so great. So, we're going to be aiming for a weekly upload schedule, though that may differ some weeks because we're going to be trying to tackle some bigger topics that might take more time. But, without further ado, should we talk about some standard? Now, importantly, this episode of the podcast is following the Secrets of Strixhaven ProTour at MagicCon Vegas, the result of which saw Nathan Steuer defeat Christoph Larsen in a 3-2 match that highlights something people may or may not have been expecting. Izzet was not the top dog at Strixhaven. In fact, while it did present the most popular deck at the tour with something like 30% of decks running the colors, it did not have the win rate to back up its infamy. Only 2 of the top 8 decks actually ended up being Izzet, with Lessons and Spelementals holding down the infamous red and blue spots. If we go back a bit, people probably wouldn't believe that. The days leading up to Pro Tour would have painted a different picture. SOS had given the Izzet decks even more tools to work with cards like Flow State and, depending on who you ask, the Blue Emeritus, providing them with even more tools at their disposal. The Izzet decks, Lessons, Prowess, Spelementals, had previously seemed unstoppable to some, with the decks making up massive percentages of registered deck lists at tournaments. But it leaves us with a question. Was the perception off about Izzet? Obviously, last year, with infamous and almost unbeatable VV decks needing to be banned, and previous iterations of the Izzet decks dominating the format, it seems like no amount of change can stop them from doing what they do best, spamming spells out and basically being unstoppable from turn 1. Yet, if we look at the statistics, they are losing. Genuinely, the last 2 top 8s of note, Lorwyn and Secrets of Strixhaven, had a plethora of other decks existing. In fact, if you look at the standard meta right now, it's quite diverse. Jeskai Control, Temur Harmonizer, and Azorius Tempo all exist at some level in this format. Are they all winning? Obviously not. There has to be a top dog. But with the SOS Pro Tour coming to a close, we see another powerhouse that has absolutely been a dominating force in the format, maybe now more than ever. So let's move on and talk about the elephant, or the badger mole, in the room. The final matchup of Pro Tour SOS saw a mirror match of Selesnya Landfall between Steuer and Larsen. The decks leaned heavily on Landfall and Mana Ramp, powered by Avatar's Badger Mole Cub and Edge of Eternity's Ice Till Explorer and Might Form Harmonizer. The fact that these 2 made it to the finals isn't an exception either. 5 out of 8 decks were Selesnya or Mono Green, and the Landfall deck featured an over 60% win rate. In the past few sets, green archetypes have received a massive amount of support, as well as format warping cards that truly make these decks a force to be reckoned with. Actually, many of the cards are appearing in the Pro Tour Finals decks. Badger Mole Cub, Ice Till Explorer, Earthbender's Ascension, Might Form Harmonizer, Sazo's Chocobo. All of these cards help present a board state that is almost insurmountable and starts from the very first turn with the Chocobo. These decks go wide, they go tall, and they recover quickly from disruption. Badger Mole Cub is a removal check that often follows itself up with even more removal checks. It also enables a mana dork like Llanowar Elves to become a threat that you have to question whether or not you want to remove, but the answer is you don't want to remove a Llanowar Elves. Basically, the deck right from the beginning creates a state where the opponent is left questioning what they're supposed to destroy. You destroy the Badger Mole Cub, they probably drop it on the next turn again, or something worse is coming out following it. Basically, the decks are explosive. Once Harmonizer is down, the kill comes out of nowhere. The green decks also have variations that feature cards like Ouroboros and possibly even Craterhoof Behemoth as finishers. It's crazy to see. Yet what really makes these decks so dangerous is just how early they present the kill. If you see the cub, the end may already be coming. Obviously, one thing we need to take into consideration is that many Magic players are playing on Arena or at their locals, and they may not feel like Izzet isn't a problem. It's important for us to keep in mind when we're discussing things like Pro Tours that the pros are playing at a completely different level than most of us are. They often develop the meta. Metas are different for them, and they plan specifically for how things may shake up. They devise ways to defeat key matchups. This is the difference. When it comes to somebody playing after work or just net decking a deck, these are the guys who come up with the decks. At the end of the day, the Pro Tour results don't necessarily take away from just how strong Izzet is. It has so many variants, and each of these variants are incredibly flexible and effective. For instance, and Spelementals all cover a wide range of bases that make most constructed decks struggle, especially if, again, you're just playing on Arena after work one day. You're either playing Izzet or getting stomped by it. And obviously that doesn't mean that you're not going to run into these Badgermole Cub decks. In fact, I think it's fair to say that Badgermole Cub being in Standard is enabling a lot of creature decks. Like, even decks that aren't necessarily green-based or landfall-based are running Badgermole Cubs just to ensure that they can get some value out of their mana dork. It's kind of a crazy card. Like I said, the Pro Tour results, Selesnya Landfall dominating at the end, doesn't actually take away from these Izzet shells. The fact that it goes particularly well against these Izzet shells is one of the things that let it get this far. It has creatures that can dodge many of Izzet's tricks, and the use of Earthbending keeps a clock on the blue-red players while making it hard to deny their deck of resources. But for the average Magic player, again, running some Standard, going to their locals, they're probably running into Izzet on the ladder more often than not. And the question is, will that change? It's hard to say right now. As the Pro Tour's just wrapped up, people are probably going to start looking at the results and planning their new decks around, probably Selesnya Landfall. Will it change in paper? That's a harder thing to ask, as from my experience, most people aren't running Tier 0 decks anyway, because, quite frankly, they can't afford them. But it does leave a very quintessential question about the Izzet shells, and maybe even the Selesnya shells, as we approach an upcoming ban list update. What are the viable targets in both of these decks, and what other cards might get hit as far as Standard goes? Obviously, the Izzet decks and their versatility are probably being monitored by Wizards. That just goes without saying. Izzet has been at the top of Standard for such a long time. It would be really surprising if they weren't watching all of these shells closely, all 3 or 4 of the Izzet decks. Will that mean anything? Realistically, probably not, especially after being massacred by the Selesnya decks at SOS Pro Tour. But if they are going to hit a card from the Izzet shells, it's pretty obvious what needs to go. Say it with me now, Storm Chaser's Talent. This card is a value engine all in itself. With the amount of self-bounce available to the Izzet decks, all of these Into the Flood Maw effects that are just 1-drop, return to hand, play it again, get value. It's a nonsense card at this point. With the amount of self-bounce available to Izzet decks, this 1-drop makes a Prowess Body becomes so dangerous so quickly because they're just cantripping to make it even bigger. And then, once you level up the talent, you get to keep using the pieces that you've already used to continue pumping the otter or making more otters. It's fast, it's efficient, and it does everything that a Spellslinger deck wants it to do on the cheap. Now, this Bloomburrow card is obviously approaching the end of its lifespan here in Standard, so the odds of Wizards banning it are kind of low. It's not impossible that the talent catches a last-minute ban, Previously Wizards hit the infamous Jace the Mind Sculptor and Teferi Time Raveler right before their standard lifetime was up. But is it fair to compare Stormchaser's talent to Jace the Mind Sculptor in his prime? I don't know. I'll leave that question up to you. Of course, the question remains if it even needs to go, if we're just going to ride out the rest of the format with the Otters slinging spells at everybody. But I guess we'll find out in a week or so. Yet, as I see it, there might be another option for a banning. This is for the green decks. The only other possible contender for a ban that I can see and many others can see is Badger Mole Cub. There's an argument for Earthbender's Ascension, but Badger Mole Cub is obviously one of the best cards in Standard right now. Yet, because the life cycle of the Cub is so new, I highly doubt that Wizards is going to touch it. If they do, I will be very surprised, but I highly doubt that Wizards is going to touch Badger Mole Cub in its infancy, basically, as it's still finding its footing in these decks. And obviously, I say that with a pinch of salt because it's found its footing in every single green deck that runs creatures, obviously, which is all of them. But yeah, its life cycle is just so new, I really doubt that Wizards is going to touch it. Obviously, they're going to be continuing to monitor green decks going forward, as the Selesnya Landfall deck had an amazing showing at SOS. But unless green decks continue to dominate formats, then Badger Mole Cub is probably just going to remain untouched. And with that, that'll bring us to the end of this episode. As the intro episode of the podcast, it's going to be a little shorter than some of the others I'm going to make, but I still really appreciate you checking out the show. What did you think about the Secrets of Strixhaven ProTour? Do you think Selesnya Landfall's the next big deck in Standard? Is Stormchaser's talent going to get smacked with the ban hammer? Let me know on whatever platform you're listening to this. And if you enjoyed this episode and the content I'm making, remember to rate the show highly. It'll help out so much. And before I go, remember, check us out on YouTube on the SlyCrow channel. You'll find the DrawGo podcast, gameplay videos, deck techs, lore vids, and more. But that's all for now. So have a great week, and I'll catch you next time.